The sound of shattering porcelain echoed through Hwangeum like a gunshot. Maya Richardson watched the antique Korean tea set worth more than 3 months of her rent explode across the marble floor in a constellation of white fragments and spreading amber liquid. The centuries-old celadon pieces, brought directly from a private collection in Gyeongju, now decorated the restaurant's entrance in irreparable destruction. Time crystallized. Every head turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. And Maya knew, with the cold certainty that lived in her bones, that this was the kind of mistake that didn't just cost you your job. In a place like Hwangeum, where Chicago's most dangerous men came to conduct business behind the veneer of 5-star Korean cuisine, this kind of mistake could cost you everything. But it was what happened next that changed her life forever. Maya didn't hesitate, didn't freeze, didn't make excuses. She dropped to her knees with fluid grace, her body moving through muscle memory carved deep by a grandmother who died teaching her one final lesson. When you dishonor something sacred, you bow until your forehead touches the ground, and you apologize like you mean it. Her spine curved into a perfect 90-degree angle, her hands pressed together at her chest, her forehead nearly touching the floor scattered with shards of history. When she spoke, her voice carried across the silent restaurant in flawless Korean, the Busan dialect precise and genuine. Joesonghamnida, I am deeply sorry. Not the casual mienhae of friends, not the polite Joesonghaeo of strangers, but Joesonghamnida, the formal apology reserved for grave offenses, delivered with the weight of true contrition. Minjun Kang, who had been walking past the entrance, stopped mid-step, froze completely. His dark eyes, which had witnessed every variation of human behavior, fear, defiance, manipulation, desperation, locked onto the black woman kneeling among broken porcelain, bowing with the exact depth and precision his mother had used when she'd apologized to his grandmother for breaking a family heirloom 30 years ago. The restaurant held its breath, because everyone knew who Minjun Kang was. What he was. The dragon tattoo that crawled up his neck beneath his tailored collar. The empire built on fear and blood and the kind of power that made politicians nervous and prosecutors disappear. And everyone knew that when Minjun Kang stopped moving, when his expression went completely still like that, someone was about to learn what real consequence felt like. But he didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the woman maintaining her bow with trembling arms, at the shards of priceless porcelain surrounding her, at the perfection of her apology that couldn't exist in the mouth of a black waitress working double shifts in Chicago. Finally, in Korean so soft the words felt dangerous, he asked the question that would unravel both their carefully constructed worlds. Who taught you that? Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So, find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. 3 months earlier, Maya Richardson had learned that death came in waves, not all at once. First came her grandmother's diagnosis, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, metastasized, untreatable, 6 months if they were lucky, 3 if they weren't. They got 4. 4 months of watching the woman who'd raised her, who'd taught her Korean while braiding her hair, who'd shown her how to make kimchi and banchan in their tiny Bronzeville apartment, who'd been more mother than her own mother ever managed to be waste away until she was nothing but translucent skin, and whispered prayers in a language Maya had learned to love because her grandmother's voice made it sound like home. The funeral had been traditional as Maya could make it with her limited understanding and even more limited budget. White burial clothes she'd sewn herself from YouTube tutorials. Incense she'd bought from the Korean market in Albany Park, bowing 90 degrees. At the altar while the handful of Korean aunties from her grandmother's church watched with tear-stained faces, murmuring approval at how well Halmoni had taught the black girl the old ways. The hospital bills came next, then the funeral costs, then the realization that her grandmother's life insurance policy had lapsed 6 months before her death because dementia had made her forget to pay the premium, $47,000 in debt before Maya even had time to properly grieve. So she'd done what survivors did. She'd swallowed her grief, put on her server's smile, and found work at the most expensive restaurant she could get hired at, Hwangeum Golden, where the wealthy and dangerous came to eat $200 Hanu beef and make deals that would never see courtrooms. She'd been there 2 months, long enough to learn the rhythms, to identify the regulars, to know which tables were untouchable and which customers would tip well if you remembered their drink orders, to understand that the real business of Hwangeum happened in the private rooms upstairs, where men in expensive suits spoke in low voices about things servers knew better than to overhear. Long enough to know she needed to stay invisible, keep her head down, collect her paycheck, and get out. She'd been doing so well at staying invisible, until the tea set. Minjun Kang had stopped believing in coincidence around the same time he'd stopped believing in mercy. Both concepts belonged to people who could afford faith in things beyond their control, people who weren't, raised in rooms where violence was currency and loyalty was measured in scars. His father, Kang Dae-jung, had built an empire from Chicago's Koreatown outward, like a cancer. Legitimate businesses fronting for operations the law couldn't touch. Construction contracts awarded through intimidation. Import companies that moved more than furniture. Real estate holdings that cleaned money faster than it could be counted. Minjun had inherited it all at 28, when his father's heart finally gave out. Whether from natural causes or assistance, no one asked, and Minjun never confirmed. 4 years later, at 32, he'd expanded the empire, streamlined operations, and earned a reputation that made his father's look almost gentle by comparison. Cold, calculating, untouchable. The dragon tattoo on his neck was just decoration. The real monster lived behind his eyes, in the parts of himself he'd frozen solid to survive his father's world. He lived in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, wore suits that cost more than most people's cars, spoke 3 languages fluently and killed in all of them with equal efficiency. And he was utterly, completely alone. Not physically. He was surrounded constantly, bodyguards, lieutenants, women who appeared and disappeared from his bed without leaving impressions. But alone in the way that mattered, in the spaces between heartbeats where he sometimes remembered what his mother's voice had sounded like before the cancer took her when he was 12. She'd been traditional Korean. Born in Busan, raised with strict Confucian values, married off to his father in an arrangement that looked like love from the outside and felt like prison from within. But she'd been soft with Minjun, had taught him proper Korean, had shown him how to bow correctly, how to pour tea with both hands, how to show respect even when you had power. When you apologize, she'd told him once, you bow until your spine remembers humility. You use Joesonghamnida like you mean it, because some things are too important for casual regret. He hadn't heard anyone use that word with genuine contrition since she died. Until tonight. Until a black waitress with exhausted eyes and trembling hands had knelt in broken porcelain and delivered the most perfect formal apology he'd heard in 20 years, in a Busan accent that shouldn't exist in her mouth. Minjun stood in the restaurant's entrance, surrounded by his security team and the handful of associates he'd been meeting with, staring at the woman who was still maintaining her bow despite the blood now seeping from her knees where ceramic shards had cut through her tights. She was bleeding, trembling, terrified, but her form was perfect. Who taught you that? He asked again, this time in English, because her Korean was too good, and he needed to understand how deep this went. The woman, he didn't know her name yet, would learn it soon along with everything else about her, lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were dark brown, rimmed with exhaustion, carrying the kind of grief that lived permanent in people who'd lost everything that mattered. Her skin was deep brown, luminous despite the restaurant's harsh lighting. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail that was starting to unravel from the fall. My grandmother, she said quietly, still in Korean, still formal. Halmoni taught me. Her voice cracked. She died 3 months ago. This tea set, it looks like one she had. From Gyeongju. I was distracted, remembering, and she stopped, swallowed, started gathering the broken pieces with bleeding hands. I'll pay for it, however long it takes. I'll work extra shifts, Stop. Minjun's voice cut through her panic like a blade. She froze, hands full of porcelain shards, blood dripping onto white ceramic. He moved closer, his expensive shoes crunching over broken fragments. His security tensed but didn't interfere. They knew better. Stand up. She obeyed immediately, rising with the same grace she'd used to bow, her hands still holding the broken pieces like offerings. Minjun studied her face, really looked at her for the first time. She was young, mid-20s, carrying the kind of exhaustion that came from working multiple jobs and sleeping in fragments. Beautiful in a way that probably went unnoticed in a place like this, where servers were supposed to be invisible. But it was her eyes that held him. There was no manipulation there, no calculation, just genuine remorse and bone-deep fear that she'd destroyed something irreplaceable. His mother used to look at broken things exactly like that, What's your name? Maya Richardson. Her voice steadied slightly, though her hands still shook. You speak Korean. Yes. Where did you learn? My grandmother raised me. She was born in Busan, immigrated in the 70s, married an American soldier who left when my mother was born. Maya's words came faster now, defensive. Hwangeum taught me everything, language, cooking, customs, she said. Her voice broke again. She said I should know where half of me comes from, even if it doesn't show on my face. Minjun felt something crack in his chest, some long-frozen piece of himself thawing against his will. The tea set is worth $30,000, he said flatly. The color drained from Maya's face. He watched her calculate, watched the math destroy her, watched her realize that even if she worked herself to death, she'd never pay off that debt on top of whatever else she was drowning in. I'll pay it, she whispered. I swear, No. He made a decision that would change both their lives, made it in the space between her terror and his inexplicable need to hear her speak Korean again, to watch her bow with his mother's precision, to understand how a black woman in Chicago knew things he'd forgotten. You'll work for me instead. Maya's eyes widened. I already work here. Not anymore. Minjun gestured to his head of security, a man named Jin who'd been with his father and now served him with the same brutal efficiency. Jin will handle your resignation. You start tomorrow at my office, 9 a.m. sharp. Doing what? Whatever I need. He stepped closer, and she didn't retreat, which was either bravery or stupidity. Translating. Cultural consultation. Explaining to me how a woman who looks like you knows Korean customs better than most Korean Americans I employ. I can't just quit my job and work for you. I don't even know what you do. The restaurant went very quiet. Because everyone knew what Minjun Kang did, even if they couldn't prove it in court. He smiled, and it was not kind. You broke $30,000 worth of antique ceramics. You owe me. This is how you pay. That's... She stopped herself before saying something that would get her hurt. That's what? He prompted softly. Nothing. Maya's jaw clenched. Fine, I'll work for you, but I need to know. You don't need to know anything except the address Jin will give you and the time you're expected. Minjun turned to leave, then paused. Looked back at her, still holding broken porcelain, still bleeding, still standing like she had any choice in what happened next. One more thing, Maya Richardson. Yes? When you bow tomorrow, his voice dropped lower, dangerous and intimate at once. Bow to me like you bowed just now. Perfect form, perfect words. Because watching someone who shouldn't know how to apologize properly deliver the most genuine Joesonghamnida I've heard in 20 years. He paused, let the moment stretch. That's more valuable than any tea set. Then he walked out, leaving her standing in broken porcelain and her own blood. Her life irrevocably changed by 3 words in Korean and a bow that reminded a monster how to feel human. Maya's apartment was in Bronzeville, a neighborhood where Korean immigrants and black families had learned to coexist through necessity and proximity. Her grandmother's place, now hers, along with the debt, was on the 3rd floor of a walk-up that smelled like kimchi and collard greens in equal measure, where Mrs. Park from 2B traded banchan for sweet potato pie with Mrs. Johnson from 2A. She climbed the stairs at 2 a.m., her knees still bleeding through hastily applied bandages, her mind replaying the night's disaster on infinite loop. Jin had been efficient. Her resignation processed, her final paycheck promised within the week, an address in the Gold Coast written on expensive cardstock. A warning delivered in flat Korean. Be on time. Mr. Kang doesn't accept excuses. Maya had nodded, taken the card, and spent the next 6 hours finishing her shift with legs that threatened to give out and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Now, in her grandmother's apartment that still smelled faintly of medicinal herbs and sesame oil, surrounded by photos of a life that had ended 3 months ago, Maya finally let herself break. She sank onto her grandmother's favorite chair, worn yellow fabric that had witnessed 30 years of Korean dramas and evening prayers, and cried. For Hwangeum, for the debt, for the tea set, for the impossibility of what she'd just agreed to, for the way Minjun Kang had looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous at once. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Car will arrive at 8:30 a.m. Be downstairs. Dress professionally. No jeans. No excuses. Jin. Maya stared at the message until her vision blurred. Then she pulled herself up, limped to her grandmother's closet, and started searching for something professional enough to meet a Mafia boss without looking like she was trying too hard. She found a charcoal gray dress her grandmother had worn to church. Simple, modest, paired with a black blazer that was slightly too big but would work. Low heels she could walk in without falling. Minimal makeup because she'd never learned how to apply it properly, and this didn't seem like the time to experiment. She set her alarm for 6 a.m., fell asleep in her grandmother's chair, and dreamed of broken porcelain and dark eyes that saw too much. The car was a black Mercedes, tinted windows, driver who didn't speak when Maya climbed into the back seat at exactly 8:30 a.m. They drove through Chicago as morning light painted the skyline in shades of gold and steel. Maya watched the city scroll past, watched neighborhoods shift from working class to wealthy, watched buildings grow taller and more expensive, until they pulled up to a tower that looked like it ate smaller buildings for breakfast. Kang Tower. She should have guessed. The lobby was all marble and chrome, and the kind of quiet that money bought. Security checked her ID, issued a visitor's badge, directed her to elevators that required key cards to access the upper floors. Jin was waiting on the 45th floor. He was older than she'd thought, maybe mid-50s, with silver threading his hair and eyes that had seen too much violence to ever look gentle. But he was professional, bowing slightly when she approached. "Miss Richardson, follow me, please." They walked through offices of glass and steel, past people working in concentrated silence, past conference rooms where meetings happened in multiple languages, past everything that made Kang Tower look legitimate while hiding what it really was. The corner office had a view that made the city look like a toy model spread out for a king's amusement. And standing at those floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in the pockets of charcoal suit pants, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the edge of his dragon tattoo, was Min-jun Kang. He didn't turn when she entered, just kept staring at Chicago like he was calculating how much of it he owned. "Close the door," he said in Korean. Maya did. Jin disappeared, leaving them alone in approximately 2,000 square feet of expensive silence. "Come here." She walked forward until she stood a few feet behind him, close enough to see her reflection in the glass beside his. They looked like they belonged in different worlds. Which they did. "Do you know what I do?" Min-jun asked quietly, still not turning around. "Import, export, construction, real estate." Maya recited what was public record. "And what I really do. Things that keep lawyers busy and prosecutors frustrated." He turned then, and the full force of his attention hit her like a physical weight. In daylight, without the restaurant's amber lighting, he was even more striking, sharper. His face was all angles and tension, his eyes dark and assessing, his presence filling the space like he'd rewritten gravity around himself. Honest. "I like that." He moved to his desk, gestured for her to sit in one of the leather chairs facing it. "Your grandmother, tell me about her." "Why?" "Because I'm curious how a black woman in Chicago learned Korean customs so perfectly that she made me forget where I was for approximately 15 seconds last night." He sat behind his desk, steepled his fingers. "And because you work for me now, which means I need to understand what I'm dealing with." Maya's jaw clenched. "What you're dealing with is someone who needs this job to pay off debt. Someone who will do whatever translating or cultural consulting you need. Someone who's too tired to play games. So if there's actual work, I'll do it. If this is some elaborate way to... To what?" Min-jun leaned forward slightly. "To humiliate you? To exercise power? To prove I can make a black woman who speaks Korean do whatever I want?" "Yes. No." The word was flat, final. "I have enough people who do whatever I want because they're terrified of consequences. I don't need to add you to that list for entertainment." He pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. "Open it." Maya did. Inside were documents, contracts, emails, text messages, all in Korean, ranging from formal business language to coded street slang. Some were in handwriting so informal it barely qualified as written Korean. "What is this?" "Intelligence. Communications between various parties I need to understand. Some of it is straightforward business. Some of it is threats disguised as pleasantries. Some of it is coded conversations about things that could get people killed." Min-jun's voice stayed level, professional. "I have translators, but they're Korean American, second or third generation. They translate the words, but they miss the subtext, the cultural implications, the way different regions phrase threats differently." He stood, moved around the desk until he was leaning against it directly in front of her. "You bowed last night with Busan precision. You used Joesonghamnida like you understood the weight of it, which means your grandmother taught you more than just language. She taught you context, history, the way Koreans communicate in layers." Maya's pulse quickened. "You want me to translate for your criminal organization?" I want you to help me understand communications from people who want me dead, so I can stay alive long enough to continue running my criminal organization. Yes, the bluntness should have been shocking. Instead, it was almost refreshing. And if I say no, then you owe me $30,000 for the tea set, plus interest, plus whatever damages my lawyers can claim for public embarrassment and business disruption. He smiled without warmth. Your grandmother's apartment is in your name now, yes? I wonder how quickly a lien could be processed. Maya felt her blood run cold. You're threatening to take my home. I'm explaining consequences of choices. You can work for me, use your skills, get paid well enough to actually survive instead of drowning in debt. Or you can refuse, and we proceed legally, and you lose everything that belonged to the woman who raised you. Minjun's voice softened slightly. I'd rather not do that. It would feel disrespectful to her memory. How do you know anything about her memory? Because someone who teaches a black girl in America perfect Korean customs, who makes sure she knows how to bow correctly and apologize with genuine remorse, who gives her granddaughter that kind of cultural foundation, he paused. That's someone who loved fiercely and taught carefully. That's someone whose memory deserves respect. Maya stared at him, at this dangerous man who could threaten her home while somehow understanding what her grandmother had meant to her. If I do this, she said slowly, if I translate your intelligence and help you understand the subtext, I need guarantees. Such as? The debt is cleared, all of it. The tea set, yes, but also the $47,000 I owe from Halmoni's medical bills and funeral costs. Clean slate. Minjun's eyebrow rose. That's nearly $80,000 total. I'm aware. But if I'm risking federal prosecution by helping you analyze criminal communications, I want my grandmother's legacy clear. I want to be able to keep her apartment without fear of collectors. Her voice cracked. I want one thing in my life that isn't built on debt. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he moved to his desk, pulled out a different folder. Sign this. Maya opened it. It was a contract. Clean, professional, terrifying in its implications. Employment agreement, cultural intelligence analyst. Salary, $120,000 annually. Benefits, full medical, dental. Sign-on bonus, $80,000. Distributed as debt payment to specified creditors. Term, minimum 1 year, renewable. Confidentiality. Absolute, enforced by penalties, including but not limited to legal action and… She stopped reading at the part that implied non-legal consequences for breach of contract. This is insane. This is fair. You give me a year. I clear your debt, pay you well, protect you while you're under my employ. Minjun's voice was steady. And if at the end of that year you want out, you walk away clean. People don't just walk away from you. People who betray me don't walk away. People who fulfill their contracts with integrity do. He handed her a pen. Your choice, Maya Richardson. Sign, or go back to drowning in debt while working double shifts that won't save you. But choose now. Maya thought about her grandmother, about the apartment she couldn't afford to lose, about the medical bills that would follow her for decades, about the impossible weight of surviving alone in a city that ground people down to nothing. Then she thought about Minjun Kang's eyes when he'd asked who taught her that bow, the moment of recognition, the ghost of something human, beneath all that calculated danger. She signed. Minjun took the contract, examined her signature, then extended his hand. Welcome to my organization, Maya Richardson. Try not to break anything else too expensive. She shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, surprisingly gentle for someone who'd just bought a year of her life. When do I start? Now. He released her hand, gestured to the documents. These communications came in over the last week. I need context, subtext, and your honest assessment of threat level. Take your time. Be thorough. Report to me directly when you're done. Maya gathered the folder, stood to leave, then paused at the door. Why did you really hire me? Minjun looked up from his computer. Because in 20 years, no one has spoken to me the way you did last night, with genuine respect, with understanding of what that apology meant, he stopped, considered his words carefully, with the kind of humanity my mother would have recognized. I reminded you of her. Yes, I'm sorry for your loss. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Pain. Certainly. She taught me the same things your grandmother taught you. Respect. Honor. How to bow correctly. How to apologize when you've caused genuine harm. His voice dropped. And then she died, and I forgot all of it. Until you. Maya held his gaze across the expensive office, across the impossible distance between their worlds, and understood something crucial. Min-jun Kang was just as lonely as she was, just as isolated, just as desperate for connection to something real beneath all the performance and survival. "I'll read your intelligence," she said quietly, "and I'll tell you the truth about what it means." But Min-jun Kang, "Yes? If you're expecting me to just be another employee who's terrified of you, you're going to be disappointed. My grandmother didn't raise me to bow to monsters. She raised me to recognize humanity even in dangerous places. So whatever this is, whatever we're building here, it starts with honesty." He smiled then. "Real, brief, devastating. Good. I have enough liars working for me already." Maya left his office with her grandmother's dress, a year's contract, and the strangest feeling that she'd just stepped into something far more complicated than debt repayment. Behind her, Min-jun Kang stared at the door she'd closed and wondered what it said about him, that a black woman's perfect bow had cracked open parts of himself he'd thought were dead. Who taught you that? Her grandmother. A woman he'd never meet who somehow understood what his own mother had tried to teach him before the cancer took her voice. For the first time in years, Min-jun felt something other than cold calculation. He felt curious, intrigued, terrified. Maya worked in an office on the 44th floor, smaller than Min-jun's, but still luxurious by any normal standard. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk of dark wood, 2 monitors for the documents she'd be analyzing, and a small kitchenette stocked with Korean snacks she recognized from her grandmother's pantry. Someone had done research. She spent the first 3 hours reading through communications, making notes in a mixture of English and Korean, her grandmother's voice echoing in her head with every cultural nuance she flagged. When someone uses Yuri instead of Jeo in formal business, they're claiming kinship, either genuine or manipulation. Busan dialect softens insults into jokes, but Seoul dialect makes jokes into insults. Watch for Hanja Chinese characters mixed into Korean. Old school, traditional, dangerous people who remember the old ways. By noon, Maya had compiled a report that made her stomach turn. 3 different communications weren't business at all. They were coordinated threats disguised as market discussions, references to shipping delays that actually meant intercepted product, mentions of construction permits that translated to territory disputes, and buried in one message, written in archaic Korean, that most modern translators would skip over. A direct death threat. "The dragon's neck will break before winter ends." She stared at those words for 10 minutes, cross-referencing dates and context, confirming what she hoped she was wrong about. Someone was planning to kill Min-jun Kang, soon, and they were sophisticated enough to code it in language that required deep cultural knowledge to detect. Maya picked up the phone Jin had given her, direct line to Min-jun's office. He answered on the first ring. "What did you find? You need to see this. Now." Min-jun appeared in her office 6 minutes later, Jin flanking him. They found Maya standing at her window, arms crossed over her chest, tension radiating from every line of her body. "Show me." She pulled up the document, highlighted the relevant passages, then translated not just the words but the layers beneath them. "This message from Han Enterprises, it reads like supply chain discussion. But Dragon is you, your organization. Neck-breaking is assassination. Before winter ends gives them a timeline. Approximately 8 weeks." She looked at him directly. "Someone in your network is planning to kill you before February." Min-jun's expression didn't change. He simply leaned over her desk, reading the Korean text with the kind of focused intensity that made the air feel thinner. "Who sent it?" "The signature says Manager Park. But the linguistic patterns..." Maya pulled up 2 other documents. They match these messages allegedly from different sources. Same writer. Using multiple accounts. "You're certain?" "My grandmother was a literature professor in Korea before she immigrated. She taught me textual analysis alongside language, how to recognize individual voice even across different writing styles." Maya's voice strengthened with certainty. "This is one person coordinating multiple false identities to create the illusion of widespread dissent. They're making you think there's a movement against you when it's actually a single snake in my garden." Min-jun straightened, his jaw tight. "Do you know which Manager Park?" "There are 3 in your communications. Park Sun-woo in logistics, Park Min-ho in finance, Park Jae-sung in security." "Jae-sung." The name came out flat, dead. "It's Jae-sung." Jin's face went carefully neutral. "Boss, are you certain? He's been with your father since..." Since my father was alive, which means he remembers when my father ran things differently. Minjun's eyes were cold. He never accepted my changes. The shift toward legitimate business, the reduction in violence. He thinks I'm soft, weak, not worthy of leading. Maya watched the calculation happening behind his eyes, watched him become something colder, harder. The dragon tattoo on his neck seemed darker somehow, like it was feeding on his anger. "What will you do?" she asked quietly. "Handle it." "That's not an answer." Minjun turned to face her fully. "It's the only answer you're getting. Your job is intelligence, Maya, not operations. You found the threat. That's enough. If you kill him, you prove him right. You prove you're still just violence and fear." The office went very quiet. Jin shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke to Minjun Kang like that. No one questioned his decisions. But Maya had signed a contract for honesty, and her grandmother had taught her that silence in the face of wrong was the same as participation. "You think you know what I should do?" Minjun's voice was dangerous, soft. "I think your mother would want you to be different from your father, and killing someone for planning to kill you just continues the same cycle." Maya stood her ground. "Exile him. Expose him. Destroy his reputation. But don't kill him. Don't give him the martyr story. This isn't a K-drama, Maya. This is real life, where men who show mercy get killed by the people they spare. Then don't show mercy. Show strategy. Show that you're smarter than him, that you don't need violence to win." For a long moment, Minjun just stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Low, genuine, the sound of someone encountering something completely unprecedented. "You've been working for me for 4 hours, and you're already trying to change how I run my organization. You hired me for truth. I'm giving you truth." "Jin." Minjun's voice sharpened. "Leave us." Jin bowed slightly and left, closing the door behind him. The silence that remained was heavy, charged. Minjun moved to the window where Maya had been standing, looked out at the city sprawling below. "My mother died because my father showed mercy once," he said quietly. "There was a rival organization. They asked for peace talks. My father agreed, believed them, walked into what he thought was negotiation." Minjun's hands clenched. "They had a sniper on a rooftop. He survived. My mother, who'd insisted on coming with him because she thought her presence would prove peaceful intent, didn't." Maya's breath caught. "I'm sorry. I was 12. Watched her bleed out on a sidewalk while my father held her and screamed. And I learned that day that mercy is what gets the people you love killed." He turned to face her. "So forgive me if I'm not interested in being strategic when someone threatens my life. I'm interested in making sure the threat never manifests. Your mother wouldn't want you to become your father. My mother is dead. So is my grandmother. But that doesn't mean I ignore everything she taught me." Maya stepped closer. "She taught me that revenge is a circle, that violence feeds violence, that the only way to break the pattern is to choose something different, something harder. Why do you care?" The question came out raw. "You've known me less than a day. You work for me because I backed you into a corner. Why does it matter to you what I do to the man trying to kill me?" Maya considered the question, considered the truth that was complicated and inconvenient and dangerous. "Because when you asked who taught me that bow, you looked at me like I was a person instead of just a server, like I mattered beyond what I could do for you." Her voice softened. "And because lonely recognizes lonely. And I see you, Minjun Kang. I see someone trying to be better than what his father built. Someone who stopped mid-step when a waitress apologized correctly because it reminded him of something he's been missing. You think you see me after 4 hours? I think I see the parts of you that you've buried, the parts your mother taught you before she died, the parts that respond to formal apologies and recognize cultural respect, because somewhere underneath all this, she gestured at his expensive office, his tailored suit, his dragon tattoo. You're still the boy who loved his mother and wants to honor her memory by being something other than his father." The distance between them felt electric. Minjun's eyes searched her face like he was trying to understand a language he'd forgotten how to speak. "You're dangerous," he said finally. "Because I speak Korean? Because you speak to me like I'm human." Maya held his gaze. "You are human. You just forgot for a while." Something shifted in his expression. A crack in the armor, brief but real. "I'll consider your advice," he said, "about Jae-sung, but I'm not making promises. That's all I'm asking." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Maya." "Yes? Thank you. For the intelligence. For He hesitated. For caring what happens to me, even if it's not strategically sound. After he left, Maya sank into her chair, her hands trembling slightly. She'd just lectured a Mafia boss about mercy, challenged his methods, spoken to him like an equal instead of cowering like everyone else did. Her grandmother would have been proud, or horrified, possibly both. Maya didn't see Minjun for 3 days after that conversation, but she felt his presence like a shadow. Security appeared in her building. 2 men in suits who stood in the lobby and walked the perimeter at night. Her landlord mentioned that someone had paid 6 months of her rent in advance. The medical debt collectors stopped calling. When she tried to take the train to work, Jin appeared with a car and a simple statement. Mr. Kang insists. At the office, she continued analyzing communications, flagging threats, building profiles of potential dangers. But she was also given access to more sensitive materials. Private messages from Minjun's inner circle. Financial records that showed the mechanics of how his empire actually functioned. Intelligence reports that detailed rivalries, alliances, weaknesses. She was being trusted with everything. It should have made her valuable. Instead, it made her a target. The first sign came on Thursday evening. She was working late, most of the office cleared out, when her computer screen went black. Then a message appeared in Korean. Black girls who speak our language should know when to stay silent. Curiosity killed more than cats. Maya's blood ran cold. She took a screenshot. Then the screen returned to normal like nothing had happened. She called Jin immediately. Someone just threatened me through my work computer. Jin's voice sharpened. What did it say? She translated. Heard his sharp intake of breath. Stay in your office. Lock the door. I'm coming up with a team. Maya did as instructed, her heart hammering. She pulled up security footage from the hallway, one of the access permissions she'd been given, and watched her own corridor. Empty. Normal. Then she saw it. A maintenance worker she didn't recognize, exiting through the stairwell. Moving quickly. Too quickly. Jin arrived with 4 men. They swept her office, found the intrusion point in her network, traced it to a laptop that had been briefly connected to the building's Wi-Fi from the 43rd floor. Jae-sung's office is on 43, Maya said quietly. Jin's face went hard. He knows you identified him. How? Doesn't matter. What matters is you're not safe here anymore. He pulled out his phone, spoke rapid Korean she caught fragments of. Move her. Tonight. Boss's orders. Move me where? Somewhere Jae-sung can't reach. 30 minutes later, Maya found herself in yet another black Mercedes, being driven through Chicago at night, her few belongings hastily packed from her apartment by efficient men who'd cleared the place in under 20 minutes. They took her to a building in Gold Coast. Luxury apartments where doormen wore uniforms and security required 3 forms of clearance. Top floor. Corner unit. The door opened to reveal approximately 3,000 square feet of wealth. Modern furniture, a kitchen meant for actual cooking, floor-to-ceiling windows with views that made the city look like scattered jewels. And standing at those windows, hands in his pockets, was Minjun Kang. Welcome, he said in Korean, not turning around. This is my building, my apartment. You'll stay here until Jae-sung is handled. This is your apartment? Maya looked around, noting the personal touches. Books in Korean and English. Art that looked expensive, but chosen for beauty rather than investment. A jacket draped over a chair, still carrying the scent of his cologne. I have a penthouse upstairs. This is my... He paused. This is where I used to stay when I wanted distance from work, before I stopped taking distance. You're putting me in your personal space. I'm putting you somewhere I control completely, where every camera, every guard, every exit is mine. He finally turned to face her. Jae-sung knows you identified him, which means he'll either try to kill you to eliminate the witness, or use you as leverage against me. Neither option is acceptable. So you're protecting me. I'm protecting my intelligence analyst, yes. That's all I am? The question hung between them. Minjun's jaw tightened. What else would you be? I don't know. You tell me. Maya set down her bag. Because I've worked for people before and they didn't move me into their personal apartments and station guards on my building. They didn't pay my rent in advance or clear my medical debt before I'd finished my first week. So either you do this for all your employees, or I'm something else. You're someone who reminds me of my mother, who speaks with her voice, who bows with her precision. His voice was rough. Which makes you rare, which makes you valuable, which makes you worth protecting. I remind you of someone dead. Yes, that's not healthy, Minjun. Nothing about my life is healthy, Maya. I run a criminal organization. I make decisions that get people hurt. I live in constant threat of assassination or federal prosecution. He moved closer. But when you bowed in that restaurant, when you said Joesonghamnida, like you understood what it meant, I felt something I haven't felt since I was 12 years old. I felt seen, known, like someone looked at me and recognized something human. Maya's breath caught. That's why you hired me. I hired you because you're brilliant and your skills are valuable. But yes, also because, he stopped himself. Because what? Because I'm lonely. The admission came out quiet, devastating. I'm surrounded by people who fear me or want to use me or would kill me if they thought they could get away with it. But you speak to me like I'm just a man. Like I could be something other than this. He gestured at himself, at the expensive clothes and dragon tattoo and everything he'd built from his father's blood-soaked legacy. You can be, Maya said softly. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You're choosing to be more than your father every day you don't kill Jae-sung. Every day you build legitimate businesses instead of just exploitation. Every day you remember what your mother taught you. And what did your grandmother teach you? About men like me? Maya thought about Hwangeum, about the stories she'd told of Korea's complicated history, about violence and survival and people making impossible choices. She taught me that monsters are just men who forgot they could choose differently, that everyone deserves a chance to be seen beyond their worst moments. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show mercy when everyone expects violence. She stepped closer. She also taught me that traditional Korean values respect, honor, proper conduct. They aren't just rules. They're reminders that we're human even when the world treats us like animals. Your grandmother was wise. So was your mother. They stood in the amber light of his apartment, the city glittering beyond the windows, two people from different worlds connected by dead women who'd taught them the same lessons in different languages. You'll stay here, Minjun said finally, until it's safe. Jin will coordinate security. You'll work from here, I'll have your files transferred. And Maya, yes? Don't open the door for anyone except Jin, or myself. Don't leave without security. Don't trust anyone who claims to work for me unless I've personally confirmed it. His eyes held hers. Jae-sung is dangerous. And he's smart. He'll use any opening. I understand. Do you? He moved closer. Because this isn't abstract anymore. This is your life in danger because you were good at your job. Because you saw what others missed. Because you're valuable to me now. The last part came out differently. Not valuable to my organization, but valuable to me. Personal. Intimate. I knew the risks when I signed the contract, Maya said. You knew theoretical risks. This is different. This is real. His hand came up, hesitated, then touched her cheek with unexpected gentleness. If something happens to you because of me, nothing's going to happen. You're protecting me. I protected my mother too. Had guards, security, the best money could buy. His voice cracked. It wasn't enough. Maya understood then. The real reason he'd brought her here. It wasn't just practical security. It was terror. The trauma of losing his mother was driving him to protect Maya with everything he had, because losing another woman who reminded him of her would break whatever pieces of him remained intact. I'm not her, Maya said gently, covering his hand with hers. And you're not the 12-year-old boy who couldn't save her. You're a man with resources and power, and the ability to keep me safe. So do that. Keep me safe. But don't carry guilt for things that haven't happened yet. Minjun's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the touch achingly tender. When did you become wise? Somewhere between medical debt and broken tea sets. He almost smiled. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled back, checked the message, and his expression went cold. What is it? Jae-sung just left the city. Either he's running, or he's getting support from allies outside Chicago. Minjun typed a response. Either way, this ends soon. Let me help. You are helping. By staying safe. By being here. He looked at her with something fierce and possessive. The best thing you can do for me right now is survive. Everything else I can handle. After he left, returned to his penthouse upstairs, leaving her in his personal space, surrounded by his guards and his scent, and the ghost of his touch on her face, Maya stood at the windows and wondered when exactly she'd stopped being just an employee. When she'd become someone worth this level of protection. Someone he looked at like losing her would matter. 3 days in Minjun's apartment taught Maya more about him than weeks of working in his office would have. His books were mostly Korean literature, classic poetry from the Joseon period, modern novels by authors like Han Kang and Shin Kyung-suk, philosophy texts that were heavily annotated in his precise handwriting. His kitchen had ingredients for Korean cooking that clearly weren't just for show. Gochugaru that had been opened and used, doenjang that was half empty, rice in the cooker that suggested he actually ate here sometimes. His closet, which she'd accidentally opened looking for extra blankets, held suits worth more than cars, but also hanging in the back, a traditional hanbok, navy blue with silver embroidery, the kind you wore to ancestral ceremonies or formal traditional events. He wasn't just Korean by blood. He practiced. He remembered. On the fourth night, Maya was cooking. She couldn't help it. Being idle made her anxious, and her grandmother had taught her that cooking was meditation. Japchae, because she'd found all the ingredients and it felt like home. She was stir-frying vegetables, the kitchen filling with sesame oil and garlic, when the elevator opened and Minjun stepped out. He stopped, stared. "What are you doing?" "Cooking dinner. I asked Jin if it was okay to use your kitchen. He said you wouldn't mind." Minjun moved closer, slowly, like approaching something that might disappear. "Is that japchae? Halmoni's recipe. I hope you don't mind. I just needed to..." She stopped, feeling suddenly embarrassed. "I needed to do something normal. It smells like..." His voice caught. "My mother used to make japchae every Sunday. Said it was too much work for a regular weeknight, but worth it for family dinner." "Sit," Maya said impulsively. "It's almost done." She expected him to refuse, to retreat to his penthouse, to maintain the professional distance between them. Instead, he loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with ink and scars, and sat at the kitchen island, watching her work with an expression she couldn't quite read. Maya plated the japchae with banchan she'd found in the fridge, kimchi, seasoned spinach, pickled radish, set it before him with chopsticks positioned correctly, parallel and to the right, the way Halmoni had taught her. Joesonghamnida, Maya said formally. "I will eat well." Minjun's eyes closed briefly. When he opened them, they were bright. "Joesonghamnida," he echoed. They ate in silence at first. Maya watching him take that first bite, watching his shoulders drop slightly, watching something in his face soften. "It tastes exactly like hers," he said quietly. "The same balance. Sweet, savory, sesame." "How did you?" "My grandmother learned from other Korean women in her church. They shared recipes, argued about proper technique, taught each other regional variations." Maya smiled at the memory. She said cooking was how immigrant women kept their culture alive. Every dish was an act of resistance against forgetting. My mother said something similar. That food was memory. That as long as we cooked these dishes, Korea lived in us, even when we were far from it. They finished eating. Maya started to clean up, but Minjun stopped her. "Let me." "You don't have to." "I want to." He moved to the sink, started washing dishes with the kind of efficiency that came from practice. "My mother made me learn. Said no man should be helpless in a kitchen. That cooking and cleaning weren't women's work. They were human work." Maya picked up a towel, started drying. They fell into rhythm. Him washing, her drying, moving around each other in the small space with surprising ease. "Tell me about her," Maya said softly. "Your mother. If it's not too painful." Minjun was quiet for a moment, hands stilling in soapy water. Then, her name was Kang Hae-jin, born in Busan to a family that made their living fishing. She was supposed to marry someone from her neighborhood already arranged, but she met my father at a market when he was visiting on business. He pursued her, promised her a better life in America. Did she want to come? I think she wanted to escape. The arrangement, the expectations, the small fishing village life. My father offered freedom. He resumed washing. But freedom in America just became a different cage. He was already building his empire when they met. She knew what he was, but I don't think she understood what it meant until they were married. Until she saw the violence up close. Did she try to leave? Once, when I was 8. She packed bags, took me, got as far as the airport. Minjun's voice went flat. He found her, brought her back, and she never tried again. But she focused everything on me, teaching me Korean, making sure I understood our culture, giving me something beyond the violence. He rinsed the last dish, handed it to Maya. She said, "Minjuna, you can be powerful and kind, strong and gentle. Your father forgot that. Don't you forget." And then she died before she could see if I listened. You did listen, Maya said firmly. You're trying to build something legitimate. Trying to be different. That's what she wanted. Trying isn't succeeding. But it's not failing either. It's process. Minjun turned to face her, leaning against the counter. They were close in the small kitchen space, close enough that Maya could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. Do you always see the best in people? He asked. Only when they deserve it. I've killed people, Maya. Made decisions that destroyed lives. Built wealth on suffering. I know. And I'm not saying that's okay or forgivable. But I'm saying... She paused, choosing words carefully. I'm saying that who you were doesn't have to be who you are. That every day you choose something different, you become someone different. Your mother would see that, would recognize the man trying to honor her memory by being better. You speak like you knew her. I know Halmoni. And mothers who teach their children to bow correctly, who make japchae every Sunday, who insist on human work instead of gendered labor. They're the same in Korean and in English. They love fiercely. They teach carefully. They die hoping their children remember the lessons. Minjun's hand came up, tucked a loose strand of hair behind Maya's ear. The gesture was intimate, natural, like his hand knew where to go before his mind caught up. What did your grandmother hope you'd remember? That being black in Korean isn't confusion, it's wholeness. That speaking 2 languages means understanding more of the world. That people will underestimate me my whole life. And that's their mistake, not my limitation. Maya's voice softened. And that love is always worth the risk, even when it's complicated. Is that what this is? Minjun's voice dropped lower. Complicated love. I don't know what this is. Neither do I. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. But I know I haven't felt human in years. And then you bowed in broken porcelain, and suddenly I remembered what it feels like to want something beyond power and survival. What do you want? This. He gestured at the kitchen, the dishes, the lingering scent of japchae. Normalcy, connection, someone who sees me and doesn't run. Someone who cooks my mother's recipes and argues with me about mercy and makes me question everything I thought I knew about myself. Maya's heart was racing. Minjun, I'm falling for you, he said bluntly. And I know it's been less than 2 weeks. I know it's inappropriate you work for me. You're here because I'm protecting you. The power dynamic is completely unethical. But I'm falling for you anyway. And I needed you to know before something happens with Jaesung. Before the danger becomes real and I don't get another chance to say it. Maya stared at him. At this dangerous man confessing feelings like a boy. At the vulnerability in his eyes that contradicted everything about his reputation. I'm falling for you too, she whispered. And it terrifies me. Why? Because people around you get hurt. Because I'm black and you're Korean Mafia, and that's not a love story. That's a tragedy waiting to happen. Because my grandmother taught me to be careful with my heart, and this... She touched his chest, felt his heartbeat racing under her palm. This feels like the opposite of careful. So we'll be careful together. His hand covered hers. We'll figure it out. Protected and cautious and honest about the danger. But Maya, I can't... His voice broke. I can't go back to feeling nothing. Not now that you've reminded me what it's like to feel everything. She should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries. Should have remembered that falling for your employer, especially your criminal employer, was a recipe for disaster. Instead, she said, okay. Okay? Okay. We'll figure it out together. Carefully. Honestly. She looked up at him. But Minjun, if you hurt me, if you betray this, if you use what I feel against me, I won't. I swear on my mother's memory, I won't. And then he kissed her. Soft at first, tentative, like he was asking permission. Maya answered by pulling him closer, by opening to him, by letting herself fall into the impossible thing happening between them. He tasted like sesame oil and promises. His hands were gentle, despite their history of violence. And when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya felt like she'd just crossed a line that would change everything. We should eat dessert, she said, slightly dazed. What? I made hotteok. Your mother's recipe is in your cookbook. I found it. Minjun laughed, the sound genuine and wonderful. You made my mother's japchae and hotteok in one night? I was nervous. I cook when I'm nervous. What are you nervous about? This. You. Falling for someone who could get me killed or arrested or hurt in ways I can't predict. Then we're even. Because I'm nervous about falling for someone who makes me want to be better, who sees through every defense I've built, who could destroy me just by walking away. He pulled her close again. Let's eat dessert, and then let's figure out how to keep you alive long enough for this to mean something. They ate hotteok, sweet, chewy, filled with brown sugar and cinnamon, standing at the counter like normal people having a normal night. And for a few hours, they let themselves pretend that's what they were. Not a mafia boss and his intelligence analyst. Not a man haunted by his mother's death and a woman drowning in her grandmother's debt. Just two lonely people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and chosen to see where it went, even though both of them knew the danger was coming, even though neither of them was naive enough to believe love would be enough to survive what came next. The attack came on a Tuesday morning. Maya was reviewing financial records, building a profile of Jae-sung's likely allies, when her monitors went black simultaneously. Not a power failure. Deliberate. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Maya Richardson. The voice spoke Korean with a Seoul accent. Formal, cold. Park Jae-sung would like to meet with you. I'm not interested in meetings with people trying to kill my employer. Your employer? The man laughed. Is that what Min-jun Kang is to you? Or is it more complicated now? We've been watching Miss Richardson. We know you're living in his personal apartment. Know he comes down from his penthouse to eat the Korean food you cook. Know he looks at you like you're something precious. Maya's blood went cold. What do you want? A conversation. You have intelligence Jae-sung needs. Information about who else knows what you discovered. Whether Min-jun has shared your findings with federal authorities. Whether you've made copies of evidence. And if I refuse to meet, then your apartment in Bronzeville burns. Your grandmother's photos, her books, her recipes written in her handwriting. All of it, ash. And after that, we start with your neighbors. Mrs. Park, who trades banchan with Mrs. Johnson. Their families, their children. Maya's hands clenched. Don't. Then meet with Jae-sung. Today. 1 p.m. There's a warehouse in Pilsen. We'll text you the address. Come alone. Tell no one. And maybe, if you're useful, everyone you love stays alive. The line went dead. Maya sat frozen for approximately 30 seconds. Then she moved. She couldn't tell Min-jun. He'd go full protective mode. Probably kill Jae-sung and start a war that would get innocent people hurt. She couldn't tell Jin for the same reason. She couldn't involve anyone from Min-jun's organization without triggering exactly the violence she'd been arguing against. But she also wasn't stupid enough to walk into a meeting with a man trying to commit murder without some kind of insurance. Maya pulled out her personal phone, not the one Min-jun's people had given her, but her own device she'd kept charged but unused, opened the voice recorder. Then she called the number back. I'll meet with Jae-sung, she said when the man answered. But I have conditions. No weapons in the room. No more than 3 of his people present. And if I'm not back in my apartment by 3 p.m., every piece of intelligence I've compiled on your operation, including financial records, communications, analysis, and federal contact information, gets automatically sent to the FBI, the Chicago Tribune, and every Korean language news outlet in the country. Silence. Then, you're bluffing. Try me. I'm a black woman who speaks Korean well enough to identify assassination plans in archaic dialect. You think I'm not smart enough to set up a dead man's switch? More silence. Then grudging respect. 1 p.m. Warehouse address incoming. Don't be late. Maya ended the call, immediately copied the recording to 3 different cloud services, then sent a delayed email to herself with instructions that if she didn't cancel it by 2:30 p.m., it would forward everything to the contacts she'd threatened. Then she dressed carefully. Black jeans, boots she could run in, a jacket that concealed the small knife her grandmother had given her not for fighting, but for cutting zip ties or ropes if necessary. She left Min-jun a note. Short, careful. Had to handle something personal. We'll be back by evening. Don't worry. M. The lie tasted bitter, but the truth would be worse. The warehouse in Pilsen smelled like rust and old machinery oil. Maya entered through the front. No point in trying to be subtle when they'd been expecting her, and found exactly what they'd promised. 3 men plus Jae-sung, no visible weapons, a metal table and chairs in the center of an otherwise empty space. Park Jae-sung was mid-50s, silver threading his hair, eyes that had seen decades of violence and learned to enjoy it. He sat like a king holding court, confident and cruel. Miss Richardson, please, sit. Maya sat across from him, spine straight, hands visible on the table. You threatened to burn my grandmother's home and kill my neighbors if I didn't come. So I'm here. What do you want? Direct. I appreciate that. Jae-sung leaned back. I want to know what you told Min-jun about my plans. I want copies of your analysis. And I want you to testify, when the time comes, that you fabricated evidence against me because Min-jun pressured you. Why would I do any of that? Because otherwise everyone you've ever cared about dies. Your neighbors, your former co-workers, that nice church congregation your grandmother attended. He smiled. I'm thorough, Miss Richardson, and patient. Min-jun may protect you, but he can't protect everyone. You're right, Maya said calmly. He can't protect everyone, but you can't kill everyone either. Not without drawing attention you can't afford. Not without making yourself so radioactive that even your allies abandon you. You think I care about attention? I think you care about survival. About building support to take over Min-jun's organization. About being seen as the legitimate heir to his father's empire. Maya leaned forward. But if you murder a black woman who cooks Korean food and reminds your organization of traditional values, if you burn civilian apartments and kill church ladies, you lose any moral high ground you were claiming. You become the monster. And no one follows monsters anymore. They're old-fashioned, inefficient. Jae-sung's smile faded. You're very confident for someone surrounded by men who could make you disappear. I'm confident because I'm not stupid. I set up a dead man's switch. If I'm not back and safe by 2:30 p.m., everything I know about your operation, and I mean everything, not just assassination plans but financial crimes, federal violations, international trafficking connections, goes to every authority and media outlet that would care. You're bluffing. You have approximately 90 minutes to find out. Jae-sung studied her, really looked at her for the first time, and Maya saw the moment he realized she wasn't bluffing, saw him calculate the risk versus reward. What do you want? He finally asked. I want you to leave Chicago. Tonight. I want you to take whatever allies you have and disappear. Mexico, Canada, Korea. I don't care. Just go. And if I refuse, then I upload everything now. And you spend the next decade in federal prison while Min-jun Kang continues building his empire. Your choice. The warehouse went very quiet. Jae-sung's men shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. The black woman was supposed to be terrified, compliant, easily controlled. Instead, she'd walked in with her own leverage and offered him a deal that was better than death but worse than victory. Min-jun has made you bold, Jae-sung said finally. Min-jun has nothing to do with this. This is my grandmother's voice in my head telling me that some fights you win by refusing to fight on someone else's terms. Maya's voice was steady. You wanted violence. You wanted to make me scared. But my grandmother taught me that fear is a choice, and I choose to offer you an exit instead of a war. Why? Because Min-jun is trying to be better than his father, and I'm trying to help him, which means not letting you drag him back into the blood cycle. So take the exit. Leave. Live. Just do it somewhere that isn't here. For a long moment, Jae-sung just stared at her. Then he laughed. Low, genuine. The sound of someone encountering something completely unexpected. I was wrong about you. You're not some translator he hired for her language skills. You're the one making him soft, making him think he can run this empire without violence. He stood. But softness gets people killed, Miss Richardson. You're about to learn that. He nodded to his men. They moved. Maya was already running. She'd counted exits when she entered basic survival instinct her grandmother had drilled into her. 3 doors, 2 windows high up, 1 loading dock. She sprinted for the loading dock, heard shouts behind her, heard footsteps pounding. Then the warehouse doors burst open. Min-jun entered with Jin and approximately 10 heavily armed men, weapons drawn, faces set in expressions that promised death. Nobody moves. Min-jun's voice cut through the chaos. Cold. Absolute. Everyone froze, including Maya, who stumbled to a stop halfway across the warehouse floor. Min-jun's eyes found hers immediately. For a moment, relief flashed across his face, then fury. What were you thinking? He said in English, his voice shaking. Then Korean. You could have been killed. Taken. Used against me. What were you thinking? I was thinking I could handle it, Maya said, trying to catch her breath. I was thinking that if I came alone, I could de-escalate without you starting a war. By offering him what? Mercy? An exit? Min-jun moved toward her, his men flanking him, weapons still trained on Jae-sung's group. He was never going to take it. He wants blood, my blood, and he'd use you to get it. She came here to protect you. Jae-sung said, amused despite the weapons pointed at him. To protect your conscience, to keep you from becoming your father. How touching, how completely naive. Shut up. Minjun didn't even look at him. His entire focus was on Maya. Are you hurt? No. Did he threaten you? Yes. My neighbors. My grandmother's building. The church ladies. Maya's voice steadied. So I offered him an exit instead of a war. Because that's what you would have done if you were thinking clearly instead of just reacting. I don't offer exits to people who threaten you. Then you're letting him win. You're becoming exactly what he wants you to be, your father. Violent, reactive, unable to think past revenge. She stepped closer. I know you're angry. I know I scared you. But Minjun, if you kill him now, you prove him right. You prove that mercy is weakness, that you're still just blood and fear. He threatened to burn your grandmother's home. I know, and I handled it. I made him understand that burning civilian apartments and killing church ladies would destroy his reputation faster than any bullet. Maya's voice rose. I gave him an exit that lets you stay who you're trying to become. But if you kill him anyway, you throw all of that away. Minjun stared at her, his chest heaving. Every muscle in his body coiled tight with barely restrained violence. His men waited, fingers on triggers, ready for the order. Please, Maya whispered. For your mother. For the man she wanted you to be. Don't do this. The warehouse held its breath. Then, slowly, Minjun lowered his weapon, gestured for his men to do the same. Jin, escort Jae-sung and his people to O'Hare. Put them on the first international flight to anywhere. Seoul, Beijing, Tokyo. I don't care. Just get them out of my city. Jae-sung's eyebrows rose. You're letting me go? I'm choosing to be better than my father. Which means giving you one chance to leave before I change my mind. Minjun's voice was ice. But if I ever see you in Chicago again, if I hear you've come within 100 miles of Maya Richardson or anyone she cares about, I will hunt you down and make sure you disappear so completely that not even bones remain. Are we clear? Crystal. Jae-sung looked at Maya. You're either very brave or very stupid. Time will tell which. Time already told, Maya said quietly. I'm brave enough to believe people can change. And you're stupid enough to threaten the woman who convinced him to let you live. After Jin and his men escorted Jae-sung out, after the warehouse cleared, after the danger passed, Minjun finally moved. He crossed the space between them and pulled Maya into his arms with enough force to steal her breath. His hands shook against her back, his face buried in her neck, and she felt him trembling not with rage now, but with delayed terror. Don't ever do that again, he whispered in Korean. Don't ever risk yourself like that. I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose you. Not like I lost her. I'm not your mother, Maya said gently. And you're not 12 years old and helpless. You're a man who just chose mercy over violence, who let his enemy walk away because I asked him to. Because you're trying to be better. I'm trying because of you. No, you're trying because of her. Because she taught you. I'm just reminding you what she said. Minjun pulled back enough to look at her. His eyes were bright, intense, terrified. When Jin showed me your note, when I realized you'd gone alone, He stopped, swallowed. I've never been that scared. Not when I was shot, not when I was in federal custody. Not ever. Just the thought of you hurt because of me, because of my world. But I'm not hurt. I'm here. I'm safe. This time. What about next time? Then we'll handle next time together. With strategy, with honesty, with the trust that I'm not helpless, and you're not the only one who can protect people. She touched his face. I'm your partner, Minjun. In intelligence, yes. But also in this. She gestured at the warehouse, at the danger, at everything. In figuring out how to survive your world while staying human. He kissed her then, desperate and tender at once. Like he was trying to memorize the taste of her, the feel of her, the reality that she was alive and whole and here. When they finally broke apart, both breathed hard. Minjun whispered against her lips. Move in with me. Not the apartment downstairs. My penthouse. Where I can keep you close. Where I know you're safe. That's not professional. I don't care about professional anymore. I care about you. About keeping you alive and close and in my life in every way you'll let me. His forehead pressed to hers. Move in with me. Let me protect you. He paused. Let me love you. Properly. Without hiding. Maya should have said it was too fast. Too much. Too dangerous. Instead, she said, "Okay, okay, okay, I'll move in. Okay, you can love me. Okay, we'll figure this out together." She pulled back to look at him. "But Minjun, if we're really doing this, then you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll keep choosing mercy over violence. Keep trying to be better than your father. Keep listening when I tell you there's another way." Her voice was fierce. "Because I can survive your dangerous world. But I can't survive watching you become the kind of monster your mother died trying to prevent. I promise," he said, "on her memory. On everything I am. I promise." And surrounded by rust and old machinery oil, in a warehouse that had almost seen blood spilled, they sealed the promise with another kiss. This time, softer, more certain, the beginning of something neither of them had thought possible. Love built on honesty and respect, and the shared belief that people could choose differently, that monsters could remember how to be human, that mercy was stronger than violence, that two lonely people, a Korean mafia boss and a black woman with perfect Korean, could find each other in chaos and choose to build something beautiful from broken things. 6 months later, Maya stood in her new office in Kang Tower Corner Office, 45th floor, views that still took her breath away, reviewing progress reports. Minjun's organization had been fully restructured. The criminal enterprises that remained were being systematically dismantled or legitimized. The trafficking connections his father had built, exposed and shut down with federal cooperation. The protection rackets, ended. The violent enforcement, replaced with legal teams and strategic business moves. It wasn't perfect. Change took time. Some of Minjun's people had left, unwilling to adapt. Some had fought back. There had been challenges, threats, 2 attempts on Minjun's life that Maya's intelligence had helped prevent. But they were building something different, something cleaner. Her role had evolved too. She wasn't just an intelligence analyst anymore. She was Director of Cultural Affairs and Community Relations for Kang Enterprises, a position Minjun had created specifically for her skills. She helped negotiate with Chicago's Korean community, translated not just language but intent in business meetings, advised on cultural implications of decisions, and, perhaps most importantly, served as a conscience check when Minjun started slipping into old patterns. The door to her office opened. Minjun entered, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, dragon tattoo visible above his collar, looking every inch the dangerous man he was, except when he looked at her. Then he softened, smiled, became something more human. "Ready?" he asked in Korean. "Almost." Maya saved her document, then stood. She was wearing traditional Korean dress today, a modernized hanbok in deep blue that she'd had custom made. Because today was special. They were attending the opening of the Kang Hae-jin Memorial Center, a community space in Koreatown that provided free language classes, cultural education, and resources for immigrant families. Named for Min Jun's mother. Funded by money from his legitimate businesses. A way of honoring her memory by helping others. As they walked to the elevator, Min Jun took Maya's hand, threaded his fingers through hers with the easy comfort of people who'd earned their intimacy through survival. "Nervous?" Maya asked, terrified. "What if no one comes? What if they do come but they hate it? What if—" Minjun. She stopped him, turned to face him. "Your mother would be proud. You built something that helps people instead of hurting them. You're honoring her by being the man she wanted you to be. I'm only that man because of you. No, you're that man because she raised you right. I just reminded you what she taught you." The elevator descended. They held hands in comfortable silence, until Minjun spoke again. "I have something for you." He pulled out a small box. Velvet. Expensive. Maya's heart jumped. "Minjun, it's not what you think. Not yet, anyway." He opened the box. Inside was a key, but not to a car or an apartment. This was old-fashioned, brass, the kind that opened something important. "What is this?" "The key to my grandmother's house in Busan. It's been sitting empty since she died. But I thought—" He paused. "I thought maybe we could go together. You and me. See where both our grandmothers came from. See the Korea they loved and left behind." Tears pricked Maya's eyes. "You want me to go to Korea with you? I want you everywhere with me. Korea. Here. In my home. In my life. In—" He stopped, smiled. "In my future. Which I'm saying badly because I'm nervous, and you make me nervous because you matter more than anyone has ever mattered. You're rambling. I'm in love." Maya laughed through tears. I love you too. Clumsy confession and all. Then you'll come? To Busan. We can visit my mother's hometown. Find your grandmother's old neighborhood. Eat real Busan food. Learn more about where we come from. Yes, I'd love that. She took the key, held it like the precious thing it was. Thank you. For this. For everything. For choosing to be better. For letting me help you. He kissed her. Soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, the elevator had reached the ground floor. Jin was waiting with the car, but before they stepped out, Minjun spoke again. One more thing. What? When we go to Busan, when we visit my grandmother's house and stand where my mother grew up. He took her hands in both of his. I'm going to ask you properly, with the right words, the right setting, the right respect for what this means. Maya's breath caught. Ask me what? You know what? His eyes held hers. But I'm doing it right, traditional, respectful, the way our mothers would have wanted. So don't act surprised when it happens. I'll try to look shocked. Liar. He kissed her again, then led her to the car. The memorial center opening was beautiful. Hundreds of people came, Korean families, black families, mixed families like Maya's had been. Children ran through halls named after Minjun's mother, learning language and culture and connection. The ribbon cutting was emotional. Minjun spoke in Korean, then English, about his mother. About her values. About wanting to honor her by building something that helped rather than hurt. Maya watched from the side, tears streaming down her face, thinking about Hwangeum. About the lessons she'd taught. About the language that had been her gift. And about the impossible love she'd found because of a broken tea set and a perfect bow. After the ceremony, after the crowds dispersed, after the photos and speeches and congratulations, Maya and Minjun stood alone in the center's main hall. She would have loved this, Maya said. Both of them would have. Minjun pulled her close. Your grandmother and my mother. Meeting somewhere in the afterlife, discussing how their grandchildren found each other, arguing about whose teaching was responsible. My grandmother's, obviously. My mother's, actually. They argued playfully, in Korean and English, their voices echoing through the empty hall. And somewhere, two women who'd loved fiercely and taught carefully smiled at their children's children finding love in broken places. Epilogue. 3 minutes. 1 year later, Busan. Maya stood in a traditional house overlooking the ocean, wearing a wedding hanbok in cream and gold. Her hair was styled traditionally, adorned with ornaments her grandmother had left her. Around her, women, Korean aunties who'd known Hwangeum, American friends who'd flown in, staff from the memorial center fussed and adjusted and wept happy tears. In another room, Minjun was going through his own preparations. Traditional hanbok in navy and gold, his tattoos hidden beneath layers of silk, his hair styled back. Jin serving as his attendant, along with Marcus and the few men who'd remained loyal through all the changes. The ceremony would be traditional, full bows, tea service, respect for both their heritage and their future. And it would be witnessed by approximately 200 people who'd watched them transform each other, who'd seen a dangerous man choose mercy, who'd seen a black woman speak Korean like a warrior and bow like a prayer, who'd seen love build something impossible from broken porcelain. Maya stood at the altar outdoors, overlooking the sea, wind carrying salt and promise. She watched Minjun walk toward her, flanked by his men, looking like a king and a nervous boy at once. When he reached her, when they stood facing each other in silk and tradition, when the officiant began speaking in Korean about duty and honor and love, Maya thought about the moment this all started. Joesonghamnida. 3 words. 1 bow, a tea set breaking and a life changing. She'd been trying to apologize for breaking something valuable. Instead, she'd broken through to something precious. A man's frozen heart, a chance at love, a future neither of them had imagined possible. The ceremony continued. They bowed deeply to each other, perfect 90-degree angles that both their mothers would have recognized. They poured tea for elders who weren't there in body but present in spirit. They exchanged rings and words and promises. And when the officiant pronounced them married, when Minjun lifted her veil and kissed her with the ocean as their witness, Maya felt her grandmother's presence like a benediction. You chose right, baby. You chose the hard path, the love path, the one that requires courage. I'm proud of you. That evening, at the reception, after the food and the dancing and the celebration, Minjun pulled Maya aside, led her to a quiet terrace overlooking the city lights. I have a gift, he said. Another one? You've given me enough. Not this. He handed her an envelope. Inside were documents, deeds, legal papers. What is this? Your grandmother's apartment building. I bought it, but it's in your name. Minjun's voice was soft. Every unit, every apartment, including hers. So it can never be taken from you. So her memory has a permanent home. So the church ladies and the neighbors and everyone who knew her can stay. Maya couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, just stared at papers that represented something beyond money. Love, respect, understanding of what mattered. And this. He handed her another document. A foundation. Also in your name. Funded by my legitimate businesses. For scholarships for mixed-race kids learning heritage languages. For community centers teaching culture. For everything your grandmother believed in. Minjun, I told you I'd do it right. Traditional, with respect. He took her hands. This is me honoring not just my mother, but yours. Your grandmother. The woman who taught you to bow perfectly and apologize genuinely and be strong enough to challenge men like me. Maya kissed him through tears. I love you. So much. I love you too. My wife. My partner. He smiled. The woman who called me an arrogant bastard in Korean and then spent a year teaching me how to be human. I never called you that. You thought it loud enough. They laughed, holding each other on a terrace in Busan, overlooking the sea their grandmothers had known, building a future from 2 languages and 2 cultures and one impossible love. And if you listened carefully, if you paid attention to the wind and the waves and the space between Korean and English, you could almost hear 2 women, one from Busan, one from Bronzeville, laughing together, proud of their children, proud of the love that refused to bow to anything except each other. The end. Maya Richardson broke a tea set worth $30,000 and apologized in perfect Korean. Minjun Kang froze, remembered his mother and asked, Who taught you that? And in answering, in the space between languages and cultures and impossible circumstances, they found something neither expected. Home. Not in a place, but in each other. In the recognition that loneliness speaks every language. And love, when built on respect and honesty, and the courage to be vulnerable, can break through any barrier. Even the ones between a Korean Mafia boss trying to be better and a black woman who bowed perfectly and reminded him why trying mattered. Joesonghamnida. I am deeply sorry. But also, thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for loving me across every impossible distance. In Korean and in English and in the language only 2 hearts can speak when they finally find home. My beautiful souls. That's where we leave Maya and Minjun married in Busan, building foundations, proving that love can transform even the most dangerous hearts when it's built on respect and genuine connection. If this story moved you, show me with that like button. Let me know you want more impossible romances, where cultural respect becomes the bridge to love. Hit subscribe because next week, a Yakuza lieutenant, a soul food restaurant in Atlanta, a black widow who speaks perfect Japanese, and a family debt that can only be paid one way. You won't want to miss it. Drop in the comments. Would you have bowed like Maya did, or would you have run? And share your location. I want to see our global family. From everywhere to everywhere. We're all here for the same thing. Stories that remind us love is worth the risk. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing with me. You are seen. You are valued. Your story matters. I'll see you next week, my loves. Joesonghamnida. Thank you. Always.